I moved into this old ranch-style house a few weeks ago. I was looking for a fresh start after losing my job as a graphic designer. The moment I stepped inside, I felt something strange. The last owners left abruptly. There were unfinished projects scattered everywhere. Part of me was curious and excited to figure them out. At first, everything was fine. I unpacked my things, set up my workspace, and hung up some art. But that quickly changed. On my third night, I woke up to tapping coming from the wall. I thought it was plumbing at first. But it wasn't random, it had a rhythm, like someone was signaling me. I tried to ignore it, but the sound nagged at me. As the nights went by, the tapping turned into whispers. It felt like they were answering my thoughts. I thought maybe I was just stressed. I started seeing things, little shadows out of the corner of my eye. Each time I turned, there was nothing there. It was disconcerting. I told myself I was imagining it, but it kept happening. During the day, I could hear children laughing. It made no sense because there were no kids around, just me. One time, I heard what sounded like tiny footsteps racing down the hall. My heart raced as I shot out of my room. I was sure I'd find someone, but there was only silence. I was terrified and didn't tell anyone about it. Maybe it was just an echo from the past, I thought, memories trapped in the walls. I tried to rationalize everything. But the laughter wouldn't leave my mind. It was unsettling. I began to doubt my own reality. I'd look out the window, seeing shadows move past the trees. I turned my head, and nothing was there. It drove me crazy. Then one night, while I was working late in the living room, it got worse. The tapping came back and escalated to urgent whispers. I could feel the voices surrounding me. Then, I saw it. A figure standing a few feet away. At first, I thought it was just a trick of the light. But there it was, staring back at me. It felt wrong. My whole body froze. A chill ran down my back, and I wanted to scream, but I couldn't. Suddenly, the whispers got louder and more frantic. Then it stopped, just like that. I stood there, unable to move. I turned around quickly, but no one was behind me. I still think about that night. I'm not sure if it was real or in my head. I told myself to leave, yet I'm still here. Every day feels heavier. I sometimes wonder if I should just pack up and go. The whispers still linger when the house is quiet. The shadows are still there, waiting for something. I don't know if I'll ever be free of this place. The next morning, I decided to get out of the house. I needed some fresh air and a break from the oppressive atmosphere. I made a list of nearby cafes and parks to explore. Hopefully, some sunshine would chase away my uneasy feelings. I started walking around the neighborhood. I was on edge, glancing over my shoulder every few moments. It was silly, but I felt like someone was watching me. I shook off that thought and focused on the vibrant colors of fall leaves lining the streets. The fresh air helped ease my nerves a bit. I stumbled upon a small antique store, its windows filled with dusty trinkets and peculiar items. Something about it drew me in. As I walked through the creaky door, a bell chimed softly above me. The store was dim, and the smell of old wood filled the air. I browsed the rows of forgotten things, but my mind was elsewhere. That's when I noticed a portrait hanging on the far wall. It depicted a family, 2 parents and 3 children. The resemblance to the whispers I'd heard in my house was uncanny. The children in the picture had bright, mischievous smiles, but their eyes seemed almost lifeless, gazing blankly. I felt a chill run down my spine. I walked closer, studying the details. "Do you know who they are?" I asked the elderly shopkeeper, who was dusting off a shelf nearby. He looked up and followed my gaze. "Ah, that old painting. It belonged to the family who lived in that ranch house a few years back," he said slowly. "Tragic story, really. They left in a hurry. No one knows what happened to them." My heart raced. "What do you mean? What happened?" He shrugged. "Rumors. Some say there were strange occurrences, noises, shadows. Others claim they just vanished. The words wrapped around me like a thick fog. I felt as if I was being pulled into a web of stories I hadn't asked for. I wanted to know more, but I was also terrified of the implications. I thanked the shopkeeper and left the antique store, my mind racing. When I got back home, I hesitated at the door. The house loomed over me, silent and foreboding. I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The familiar tapping began again, muffled but steady. My eyes darted around the room, searching for the source. I made my way to the living room, ready to confront whatever was there. The whispers rose and fell like a tide, drowning out my thoughts. Then, suddenly, they stopped. I stood frozen in the doorway, peering into the dim room. And that's when I saw it again. A faint figure, shimmering at the edge of my vision. It was almost like a reflection in a darkened mirror. I blinked, and it was gone. I felt a tightening in my chest. All the air seemed to drain out of the room. Should I run? Should I call for help? My legs were rooted to the floor, paralyzed by fear. I knew I had to get answers, but the longer I stayed, the more I could feel the shadows creeping closer. Then, a soft voice echoed through the silence. Help us. I stumbled back, my breath hitching in my throat. I wasn't sure if I was ready for this. But somehow, I knew I had to find out what was happening in this house, or I might find myself trapped there forever. I bolted from the living room, my heart thundering in my ears. Panic coursed through me as I dashed into the kitchen. I slammed the door behind me, pressing my back against it. I couldn't breathe. What did that voice mean? Who needed help? I took a moment to gather my thoughts. The shadows didn't feel like they were just in my head anymore. I threw a glance around the kitchen, hoping for something, anything, that would make me feel safe. The air felt thick, as if the house itself was holding its breath, waiting for something to unfold. And then I noticed it, the old family photograph I had found at the antique store. I had left it in my bag on the kitchen counter. I hurried over to grab it, desperate to understand what link I might have missed. I pulled it out and studied the faces again, searching for clues in their haunting smiles. They felt familiar somehow, but I couldn't place why. As I focused on the portrait, the image of the family shifted in my mind, like a movie reel catching up to speed. Suddenly, I saw a flicker of light. It was brief, but it sent electricity through my veins. I blinked again, and the kitchen lights flickered, dimming and brightening like a faulty bulb. Not now, I whispered, fighting against the rising tide of fear. Just then, the voice returned, but this time it didn't echo. It came from right behind me. Find us. My body turned cold, and I felt a rush of adrenaline. I didn't dare look back, I couldn't. The atmosphere shifted around me, thickening with a weight I couldn't escape. I dashed toward the back door, debating whether I should run out into the night or face whatever was behind me. Just as I reached for the handle, the voice spoke again, clearer this time. Please. Something shifted in my gut, telling me I had to turn around. I had to confront the unknown. Gripping the photograph tightly, I slowly turned to face whatever was behind me. My gaze landed on the empty doorway, but I felt a chill settle in the room. Then a shadow flickered across the wall, a figure, darker than the surrounding gloom. My breath quickened, but then I noticed something. The shape was familiar. It matched the silhouette of the children from the photo. They stood together, united in their stillness, just out of reach. Why? I breathed, the word barely escaping my lips. A soft giggle echoed, a sound so innocent yet so wrong in this context. Help us find our home. Everything in me screamed to flee, but the weight of their plea anchored me in place. I couldn't ignore them, not now. I had to understand. I took a shaky step forward, holding the photograph out as if it were a lifeline. That's when the light flickered again, this time illuminating the space around us. The shadows began to shift, rearranging themselves until, in an instant, words formed in the darkness, "Follow the whispers." With a racing heart and trembling hands, I realized I had no choice. I had to follow the whispers. But where would they lead me? I knew I was descending into a place I might never return from, and yet, I couldn't turn back now. I took a deep breath and stepped away from the door. With every heartbeat, the image of the children lingered in my mind. "Follow the whispers," they had said. The words echoed around me, almost as if the house itself was urging me to move. I took a tentative step toward the narrow hallway that led to the living room. The shadows pressed in on me, but there was a subtle pull, something woven into the darkness. I could almost hear it, a soft, melodic whisper threading its way through the air. It felt inviting yet foreboding at the same time. That I gripped the photograph tighter, hoping it would guide me. The whispers grew louder as I moved further down the hall. It was a soft sound, like a breeze rustling through leaves, yet full of urgency. I felt a tug at my heart, the kind that told me something was extremely wrong but also incredibly right. "Keep going," I muttered to myself. "Just keep going." I turned into the living room, which was dimly illuminated by the moonlight pouring through the windows. My eyes darted around. The space felt larger than it was, the corners shadowed by the night. I took another step forward, and the whispers led me toward the fireplace. There, on the mantelpiece, sat an old music box I hadn't noticed before. It was ornate and dusty, as if it hadn't been touched in years. My hands shook as I reached out to open it. "What is this?" I whispered, unsure if I wanted to know. As I lifted the lid, a melody began to play. It was hauntingly beautiful and seemed to resonate with the whispers that now surrounded me. The music wrapped around me like a blanket, and I felt drawn to the warmth it offered. Each note made the hairs on my arms stand on end. The tune felt familiar but distant, as if it had been locked away for too long. Suddenly, the temperature in the room dropped. Chills prickled down my spine as the whispers turned sharp. "The key," they urged. And then I saw it, a glint of silver in the dim light, lying just outside the fireplace. I bent down to grab it, my heart sinking as I realized it looked like an antique key. I stood up, key in hand, and the whispers intensified. "Unlock the truth." Questions swirled in my mind. What truth? What should I be unlocking? The music box, the photograph? What home were the children asking me to find? But before I could gather my thoughts, the music suddenly stopped. The silence that followed felt oppressive, weighed down by what was about to happen next. I stood still, listening, and that's when I saw it, a shadow in the corner of the room, shifting, then solidifying into a figure. I froze, my instincts screaming at me to run, but I couldn't. A fragile voice spoke, echoing the whispers. "Help us." In that moment, all my fears came rushing back, stronger and more real than ever. I was in over my head, tangled in a story I didn't fully understand. I had to find a way to help them, but terror coursed through me. What if I couldn't? Then everything went dark. The lights flickered out, plunging me into deep shadows. The whispers vanished, leaving a heavy silence that filled the room, and just like that, I was alone. I blinked, trying to adjust to the sudden darkness. My heart hammered in my chest, and I fought the urge to scream, hoping the thing in the corner wouldn't move. I couldn't see anything now. The darkness felt all-consuming, as if it were alive, pulsing around me. I missed the whispers. Tentatively, I turned my head, straining to catch any sound. I remembered the key in my hand and thought about the music box. I needed light. I needed to see. I fumbled for my phone, nearly dropping it twice before finally grasping it. As I turned on the flashlight, a beam cut through the shadows, illuminating the living room. My breath hitched. The figure was still there, a mere silhouette against the wall, but now it looked smaller. I took a step back, and the light flickered, casting strange shadows. "Who are you?" I managed to call out, but my voice trembled, barely above a whisper. The figure didn't respond but continued to hover in the corner. I aimed the flashlight closer, my palms sweating. The closer I got, the more details I could make out. It looked like a girl, her hair hanging in dark, tangled strands, her eyes wide and glassy. "I'm not here to hurt you," she finally whispered. The sound sent ripples of fear down my spine. It wasn't the comforting call of the whispers. "What do you want?" I asked, instinctively taking another step back. It wasn't just the girl, the entire room felt charged with a strange energy. The corners looked darker, deeper, as if something was lurking just beyond what I could see. "Help us," she repeated, her voice catching like rusted gears. The intimacy of her plea lodged in my throat, and I felt a strange urge to help her, despite my fear. But what could I possibly do? "Help you with what?" I asked, an anxious hope threading through my voice. "The music box, the key, it's not what you think." Her words spilled out in a rushed whisper, carrying urgency. She looked toward the mantelpiece where the music box still sat, its lid closed. "You must open it again." "Why?" I questioned, panic rising again. "What happens then?" Her eyes bore into mine, the shadows flickering around her. "The truth will come. You must unlock it before it's too late." That's when I felt a sudden shift in the air, a rush of energy that left me breathless. The sound of rustling filled the room, and I turned my head toward the hearth. A chilling wind swept through, extinguishing my phone's light. Frantically, I hit the button repeatedly, but it wouldn't turn on. The darkness closed in, thicker than before, and the girl's form began to fade. "No!" I shouted, desperate. "Time is running out." She whispered just before she disappeared that I stumbled back, the overwhelming silence swallowed everything. My heart raced as realization struck me. Whatever was locked inside that music box was dangerous, and I was at the center of it all. There was no going back. Just as I finally steadied myself, the lights flickered back on, and there was again a shadow darting across the wall. Someone or something was in the house, and now I sensed it watching me. A chill ran through me, and a single thought echoed in my head: I had to open the music box. The truth awaited, and I was running out of time. My fingers trembled as I approached the mantelpiece. The music box seemed so innocent, just a painted trinket waiting to be wound. But the girl's words echoed in my mind. "The truth will come." I wasn't sure I wanted to know that truth, but I felt drawn to it. My heart hammered against my ribs as I reached for it, the latch clicked open easily under my touch. I hesitated, glancing around the room. The shadows were still, but I felt the weight of unseen eyes watching me. I inhaled sharply and turned my attention back to the music box. With a deep breath, I lifted the lid that it opened with a soft creak, and the familiar tune began to play, the notes soft and melodic, a stark contrast to the tension in the room. But as soon as the music filled the air, something shifted. The shadows flared, dancing along the walls, and the temperature in the room plummeted. That's when I saw it. Faces formed in the swirling darkness, distorted and mournful. I staggered back, clutching the edge of the mantel. They were not real, not in the sense I knew, yet they felt so heavy, their sorrow pressing down on me. The girl appeared again, her eyes filled with urgency. "You must listen," she urged, her voice straining against the music. I wanted to cover my ears and drown her out, but I couldn't tear my gaze away. "The music box holds our stories. You need to understand what happened," she continued, drifting closer, her form flickering with each note. "We were trapped by the curse, lost to the world." A new wave of fear washed over me. "A curse?" I asked, my voice barely a whisper above the gentle tune. I wasn't ready to confront curses or spirits, yet the need to know was overwhelming. "Yes, a curse," she confirmed. "And time is running out. The key is more than a key. You need to find the missing piece." "Missing piece?" I echoed, confusion swirling in my mind. "What piece?" The girl pointed toward the deepest shadow in the corner of the room, a place I had avoided since finding the music box. I shook my head, unwilling to move toward it. Please. Her voice cracked, desperation sending chills up my spine. You must. Before they find you. The music grew louder, drowning out her words, and I felt the shadows shift. Panic surged through me. I turned my back on the girl, scanning the room for an escape route. But the darkness surged, and suddenly, I was not alone. I spun around, heart racing, to see something moving just beyond the reach of the light. A tall figure loomed, its features obscured but its presence unmistakable. It was watching me with a palpable malice. I swung back to the music box, my breath quickening as the melody reached a crescendo. It was now or never. I had to act. I took a step toward the shadow, my body stiff with fear, knowing there was no way out but forward. Then everything went dark. The music stopped, and I was engulfed by an oppressive silence, as if the world held its breath, waiting for me to make my next move. I stumbled forward into the darkness, my instincts screaming for me to retreat. But retreat was not an option now. I reached out, feeling the cold air brush against my skin, a stark reminder that I was not alone. In the silence that followed, panic clouded my mind. Had I truly entered the shadow? I wanted to gasp, to scream, but the oppressive darkness smothered my voice. Just as I felt a rush of despair, a flicker of light ignited in the corner of my eye. I turned, desperate for clarity, squinting at the faint glow. There, halfway submerged in the darkness, lay something gleaming. I stepped forward, heart racing. It was the missing piece. The girl spoke of a small, intricately carved key. But it shimmered unnaturally, more like a jewel than an ordinary key. Grabbing it felt like reaching into a fire, but I couldn't resist. The moment my fingers closed around it, a surge of energy shot through me. The darkness hissed, a sound like steam escaping, and the figures within it shifted, their anguished faces morphing into something more monstrous. Leave! I heard the girl scream, her face suddenly panicked. You don't understand what you've done. I staggered back as the shadows twisted, trying to escape their own prison. Their cries mixed with the echo of the music box, now eerily quiet. Overwhelmed by the chaos, I clutched the key tightly. What do I do? I shouted, hoping she could hear me amidst the cacophony. You must unlock the truth. But be careful. She warned, the urgency in her voice cutting through my fear. Use it wisely. But I didn't know how. The room started to vibrate, the walls shaking as if alive. I could hear whispers rising from the shadows, words I couldn't comprehend, but they felt like warnings that my heart raced. Unlock what? I yelled back. But the girl only pointed desperately toward the now dimmed music box. Instinct kicked in. I dashed toward the box, key in hand. My breath came in sharp bursts. I didn't understand how this would work, but I had to try. I slid the key into the small lock that held the lid shut. It fit perfectly, and as I turned it, I felt the energy pulsate. The moment the key clicked, a blinding light erupted from the box, washing over everything in the room. I shielded my eyes as the music surged back, a powerful melody that pulsed through the air like a heartbeat. Almost instantly, the shadows screeched, their faces contorting in agony before they started to dissipate. Then, I felt something grab my arm, ice cold and unyielding. That I whirled around, but there was no one there. I struggled to shake off the sensation, but it held firm. Whatever had touched me felt familiar, yet suffocating. Summoning my courage, I turned back to the music box. The faces were gone, but I still sensed something lingering. The girl's words echoed in my mind. Time is running out. With my heart in my throat, I knew that unlocking one truth had only led to more questions. I could no longer ignore the terrible weight of what I had awakened. The room began to pulse with energy again, and I realized I had only just begun to scrape the surface of the curse that wrapped around my new home. Suddenly, the shadows returned, swirling wildly, dark tendrils reaching towards me. I staggered back. What now? I gasped, fear forcing me to the brink. I had to figure out what was happening before it took me too And I had a feeling that whatever was coming, it would be worse than before. The shadows surged forward, hungry and wild, their tendrils snaking across the floor toward me. I felt powerless, cornered, my back pressing against the music box. In that moment of panic, thoughts raced through my mind. I needed to find a way to use the key, but how? The girl's warning sliced through my chaos, use it wisely. But what did that even mean? The music, once uplifting and beautiful, turned sinister, each note twisting in the air like a threat. I took a step back, desperate for an escape, but the shadows didn't relent. Then, in the blinding light emanating from the music box, something caught my eye. The previously innocuous carvings on the box started to shift, revealing a series of symbols I hadn't noticed before. They glowed faintly, calling to me as if they held the answers I needed. Focus. I whispered to myself, trembling. I knelt down, squinting to see the details more clearly. Each symbol seemed to connect lines and curves twisting around each other like a web. A thought struck me, what if the key didn't just unlock the music box, but also this hidden language? I grasped the key again, its temperature still unnaturally warm. With determination, I pressed it against the first symbol. To my astonishment, a pulse of energy radiated from the key. It felt like a connection, a shared heartbeat between the key, the box, and whatever lay beneath the shadows. Suddenly, the shadows shrieked louder, as if my action had angered them. The ground trembled, and the lights flickered. Fear clawed at me, but I pushed back against it. I had to keep going. I knew the key had power, and I needed to figure out its purpose. With shaky hands, I moved to the next symbol. Doubt flooded my mind. What if I was only making things worse? But there was no time to hesitate. I pressed the key against the second symbol, and a shock of light shot through me. It burned bright, casting the shadows back for a heartbeat, but in that heartbeat, something shifted. The energy from the box surged and enveloped the room, revealing more than I had anticipated. Faces emerged from the darkness, not just monstrous visages, but glimpses of the past people caught in anguish, trapped within the shadows. I could see their desperate eyes, begging for release. What do I do? I shouted again, hoping against hope that the girl would answer, but there was only silence. The energy began to overload, and the shadows, now writhing in fury, moved with renewed urgency. Please! I yelled as I pressed the key against the final symbol. The lid of the music box flew open, and an explosion of light erupted. The shadows convulsed, threatening to consume me whole. My heart pounded as I faced the force of what I'd unleashed. Then, amidst the chaos, I saw a figure tall and cloaked in darkness, its presence darker than the shadows surrounding us. It raised a hand, the silence falling abruptly, and for a moment, time seemed to stop. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I was frozen, tethered by a force I didn't understand. Now you have awakened the true curse, it whispered, its voice an echo that sent chills across my spine. The air thickened, and realization dawned. The true terror was not behind me, but right in front of me. I had to act fast, but how? What did it want from me? That was when it hit me. I had to choose. My instincts screamed at me to fight or flee, but I was locked in place. The figure moved closer, its dark cloak trailing like a shadow weaving through the air. Around us, the shadows writhed, looking for a way to breach my momentary shield. Choose, it demanded again, the word echoing in the sudden stillness. It felt like the room collapsed down around me, turning oppressive. Choose what? I thought desperately. I scanned the memories of the past few moments, the faces trapped in the dark. Were they lost souls like me? Chained to this place by the curse? Do you want power or freedom? The figure's voice slithered through the air, smooth and threatening. You can free them, or you can seize what they desire. The promise of power flickered in my mind, igniting a spark of temptation. I thought back to the music box, its energy. If I seized control, what could I do? But the faces of the imprisoned people burned in my memory. I couldn't ignore their pleas for escape. As if sensing my hesitation, the figure smiled a chilling grin that spread across its shadowy face. You cannot have both. Choose. My heart swelled with dread. The shadows stirred restlessly at my feet, sensing my turmoil. What if I picked wrong? I took a shaky breath, trying to cool the adrenaline surging through me. My hand still clutched the key, the warmth pulsing in time with my thundering heart. This was the moment of truth. Power sounded intoxicating, like the thrill of controlling everything around me. But I knew I'd have to live with that choice. How many more would suffer if I took that route? I could see the tortured faces more clearly now, their despair washing over me like a wave. Make your choice. The figure loomed even closer, its voice a harbinger of doom. I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders, and the urge to scream bubbled up inside me. Then, everything around me shifted. The shadows grew denser, hungry for my decision, and I could feel their cold fingers clawing at my resolve. Freedom, I whispered hoarsely, knowing the words could seal my fate. I choose freedom. A thrum of energy surged through me. To my shock, a cascade of light burst from the music box, lancing through the atmosphere like lightning. The shadows recoiled, hissing in outrage, and the figure let out a roar so loud it rattled the very foundations of the house that I braced myself, knowing the choice had set something in motion. The energy intensified, and from the depths of the shadows, the faces began to move toward the light. I watched in awe as one by one, the tortured souls surged forward, pulled by an unseen force, but just as they reached for the brightness, the figure let out an ear-splitting scream. You cannot escape. This is only the beginning. Then, in an instant, a dark wave radiated from it, sweeping through the room in a pulsating rush. The energy shifted, the light flickering, and I felt it pulling me backward. My breath hitched. The faces were slipping away, caught between light and darkness. Wait. Come back. I shouted, but it was too late. The light flickered, dimming with the increasing shadows. Panic shot through me as I struggled against the pull. I had chosen, but what if it wasn't enough? Then everything went dark. I blinked, trying to adjust to the darkness that enveloped me. My heart raced, pounding with a rhythm that felt all too familiar. I was back in the living room, standing still beside the old music box. It sat quietly on the mantel, lid closed and the faintest echo of a melody still resonating in my mind. Everything had changed, the overwhelming sense of foreboding had lifted, but I could still feel unease settling in the corners of the room. What just happened? I whispered to myself, my voice trembling. My throat felt raw, as if it had been tested against something far deeper than fear. Alone in the silence, the weight of what I had chosen bore down on me. Had I freed the souls trapped within the shadows, or had I merely aggravated the darkness that had claimed them? The shadows no longer roamed freely. The room felt lighter, though the air still bore an electric tension. In the absence of the encapsulating darkness, curiosity bubbled to the surface. I approached the music box, glancing at the intricate carvings on its surface. They looked almost serene against the wall of shadow I had fought through. My fingers brushed over the cool wood, and for a moment, I swear I felt something pulse beneath the surface, like a heartbeat guiding me. Please, a soft voice echoed in my thoughts. The girl's voice from before. Find us. It slipped away like sand through fingers, leaving behind chilling echoes. The earlier urgency in her plea ignited my resolve once again. Maybe I had followed one whisper, but others remained, waiting to be found. That I surveyed the room, searching for answers. The muted remnants of the ordeal lingered in the air, where shadows had flickered moments before. I realized I might not have fully grasped the reality of what had occurred, and the truth lingered just below the surface, waiting to unfurl itself like pages of an unread book. Looking down at the key in my hand, it now felt oddly warm, glowing faintly in the gentle light of the room. I hesitated, realizing that the choice I had made wasn't final. There was more to uncover here, something buried beneath the layers of time and grief. What had I unleashed, if anything? As I glanced out the window, the fallen leaves danced on the wind, vibrant colors swirling under a muted autumn sun. I had come looking for a fresh start, but instead found myself ensnared in more questions than answers. The pressures of reality felt different, heavy in a way that forced me to confront what I couldn't see. Would the whispers return? Would I ever know for certain what happened to the family before me, their connection to this place? I still felt a pull, a murmur in the silence. Glancing around the room one last time, I decided that I couldn't just leave the past behind. I had to find out more. There was history here, intertwined with my own fate, and I sensed I was far from finished with whatever journey began in this house. That I took a breath and stepped forward, ready to flip the pages of an unwritten story. I didn't know if I could liberate those lost souls or if my actions would lead to more chaos. But as I turned back toward the music box, one thing remained certain: my own path was now irrevocably linked with the mysteries of the house. I had only just begun to uncover the layers of shadows and whispers tethered to my own reality. Sometimes, I think about what happened that night. I never went back to that neighborhood, and sometimes I wonder if the house still stands, if the shadows still linger. But sometimes I find myself pondering, what other mysteries wait to be uncovered, beckoning just beyond the edges of my perception.